What is going on, everybody? What is going on? First and foremost, before we get started, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, hit that post notification bell so you'll know when. And also, by what's at the bottom ticker, I'm not asking for your money at all. I understand, a lot of, all of us are struggling today with the economy. I understand it. But the option is there if you are feeling so nice. You can go ahead and, send it to the Cash App, send a little, send a little bit of money to the Cash App. Obviously it would be greatly appreciated. Not demanding, not even, really pushing it too hard. Just if you want to do it, obviously I greatly appreciate it. Let me know it was you who did it so I can give you a shout out. But that is an option now. You want to support me in any way, because money doesn't grow. It's a little gesture. You don't, if you can't, perfectly fine with me, completely understand. But yesterday was the start of, the first Sunday of the NFL season. And the Atlanta Falcons and their months of hype really culminated yesterday in a game versus the Pittsburgh Steelers that obviously was really hyped up for months. And was supposed to be the caterpillar of a season filled with expectations and an offense that a lot of people, better ones in the entire NFL. Ultimately, yesterday ended up in absolutely coming out, crapping the bed, as the Falcons did lose to the Steelers yesterday, 18-10. I was gonna do the recap last night. I didn't really feel like it though. And you know what? To be honest, that's probably how I'm gonna do a lot of these this season. I may just wait until the day after to do a recap, so that I can think it over, because obviously in the moment, in the emotions, you can say fucking anything, but you really think about stuff. Obviously I was able to sleep on it, thought about it today, doing my usual thing. Now I'm here to talk about it, and I got a lot I want to talk about. And it's so hard to really describe because it legitimately feels like somewhere along the lines we were bamboozled, because we were told for months that the 2016 2.0, you had Kirk at quarterback, really, you don't got to be concerned, about any of the injuries or anything. We have Bijan, we have Drake London, we got Kyle Pitts. And ultimately, yesterday, the offense really wasn't able to do anything at all in the second half. I believe they only had like 60 yards the entire second half. The first half, really, the first half it was all right, but it could have been better. But make no mistake, and I think everyone who knows this game saw it, understands this. The offense is the reason we lost. Yes. As much uncertainty I think there was for them coming into this season, the defense yesterday, honestly, I can't even lie. I was actually, even though, I kind of was feeling on the confident side with them, there were still some questions about how would the defense do. Oh, it was really the only one on defense who had a bad game yesterday. And George Pickens all game is beyond me. Like, why people do have skepticism about AJ Terrell. That's a good example yesterday because of this defense. Other than that, I feel like they came out yesterday and the concerns I may have had about Justin Fields, were really mitigated. They got some very clutch. They made the key plays to help us win the game. Granted, did they get an interception? Did Matthew Judon get a strip sack? No. However, they did enough for us to win the game. We didn't win this game, let's be very clear, because of the offense, and we all know it. We all know why we lost this game. And the big story of it starts with Kirk Cousins, who had, I believe, a 29.2 quarterback rating yesterday, which, everyone knows that's absolutely abysmal. 155, touchdown, 2 interceptions. And matter of fact, that's how second half. So, needless to say, it was a very second half where obviously they got shut out. And Pittsburgh was able to win without scoring a single touchdown in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And to be honest, that has not happened a lot. And when it does, it's pretty damn embarrassing for a home team to come, to be at home. Obviously, the defense, they don't let up a touchdown. And yet the home team still finds a way to lose the game. That's what it was yesterday. It was beyond embarrassing. And it has now left us with a lot of questions. And I think obviously it's a lot of questions about Kirk Cousins. It's a lot of questions about, the philosophies this team took, in preparation for this game throughout all of training camp and in the preseason and, the different aspects of that. But I think we got to look at it from this perspective. Number one, the Falcons were obviously not prepared for the Steelers down the stretch. They just were not, at least not the offense. Really lined up in many ways with what it should have been. It was an offense that was out of sync in so many ways. And you just saw, you look at it, about 4 catches, 52 yards. Bijan Robinson, he had the most catches of anyone. Listen, Bijan saw the ball 23 times. Bijan got the ball. There's no argument about that. But you can't win just giving one man the ball, especially when you got guys. You got Drake London, who only had 2 catches for 15 yards yesterday. We're talking about a guy who easily has been one of the favorites to have a breakout season. And obviously, look, it's only one game. There's still 16 of them to go. But Drake London, the amount of times he got the ball, he even got looked at yesterday. It was not good. It was not impressive in any way. There were no go balls thrown. There was none of that. Darnell Mooney, a guy we paid $13 million to $39 million in total for 3 years this offseason. 1 catch for 15 yards. Kyle Pitts, he had the touchdown. That, by the way, was obviously the most effort, the most scheming I think we saw from Zach Robinson all game. But it was only 3 catches for 26 yards. You look at the stat line, and then you look at it's less than 4 yards, a carry on average. Tyler Algier only got the ball 3 times. And I said this before the game. This had to be a Tyler Algier game. This had to be a game, obviously, you got the running game involved early, which I will say they clearly did do. They tried to get the running game going early. They just didn't do it the way they should have. You should have had a more balanced approach. You should have had both Bijan and Tyler Algier in there. And there were some plays that they were, but at the end of the day, you were basically only using Tyler most of the game as like a decoy. That's pretty much what it was. He was just there for show. 3 carries for 21 yards against a team like the Steelers. That should not be acceptable. That honestly should have been the guy you are going to in a lot of those situations. That should have been your ground and pound guy. When you realized this wasn't going to be the day for Kirk Cousins and this passing offense, that's when the plan should have immediately switched to a lot of under center stuff, getting Tyler Algier involved, grounding, pounding, running that damn ball down Pittsburgh's throat. And ultimately, it failed. They were not able to materialize it. And look, another big thing that not a lot of people are talking about, penalties. Penalties killed us yesterday. The refs certainly made their presence in yesterday's game. I mean, we're talking about, offsides, holding, you name it. The effort of football yesterday, especially from the offensive side of the ball. And when you look at just the overall expectations of what the Zach Robinson offense was going to be, that he was basically going to be the next Ben Johnson, the next Bobby Slowick. He's the next one of these guys to come from that McVay tree, that Shanahan tree, and become that next great offensive mind that puts his own rendition of that offense out on display. It was disappointing yesterday. It was. And maybe we expected too much out of this team. Maybe the expectations were too high. But nonetheless, there is no arguing that this was a very disappointing effort and performance. Now, the way you look at it and the way you can look at it is there are many, ways you can look at this thing almost. So you can either look at it from a pessimistic standpoint or you can look at it from an optimistic standpoint. And because it was only, it's so easy to mail it in after this one game. It's so easy to say, this is it. Season's over. It's so easy to say this was an absolute failure. And it may be harder to say, but, there's still people saying it's only one game. It's at the end of the day, you're going to run into this at some point. You're going to take your bumps. You're going to, have to go through those growing pains. And there's a lot of, criticism of that. Well, obviously the biggest one is, well, why didn't they play in preseason? Now, I think as far as looking at preseason, let's say you would have gave this entire offense. That includes Kirk Cousins. Then could they have been a little more, or even, a quarter or something? Could they have been a little more polished up? Sure. But I think, well, it could have had the story. I think that could be something, but I don't think it's the entire piece of the story. one of the there really is. I mean, there's teams that don't play starters in preseason, and that you prefer to do so. You prefer to play your starters in preseason because you you don't want to cause injury or risk it in any way, but you don't also want them coming out looking completely sluggish. But there's some teams that are able to come out not even playing preseason and get out to a pretty all right start. Now, I will say, I think looking back, obviously, it's much easier to say this now than it was 3 weeks ago. But the Falcons, in so many ways, yes, they should have played starters at some point in preseason. Yeah, especially considering it's a new offense, it's a new head coach, it's a new quarterback. Everyone should have played a little bit in preseason. I don't think that's the entire issue, though, with what we saw yesterday. I think there's two major issues, and maybe this can, at least one of them can tie back to preseason. But at the same time, this is also just, these were some really big issues. Number one, Zach Robinson called maybe one of the most vanilla game plans we've seen in a while yesterday. There was no, outside of two plays, the Kyle Pitts touchdown and the jet sweep to Bijan on, the 4th and short. Outside of those two, there was no effort put into any play to be creative at all. And that's a big issue because one of the most simplest aspects of football is every play has to build off the last play. And granted, you don't want to show your entire bag week one. You don't want to be in a situation where you expose yourself the first few weeks of the year. But still, you have to show different variations. The Falcons, it felt like yesterday, they were running out of the same few formations. It was a bunch of Arthur Smith shit. They were either spreading them out, they were going empty, or they were in the pistol. And at the end of the day, that's an issue when you have no wrinkles in anything. So many are asking, well, what do we say to Zach Robinson? We do have to keep in mind this was his very first game calling the offense as an offensive coordinator. We have to keep that in mind. So you would obviously have to think he's going to get better in some aspect. With that being said, though, this was, for all the talk that there was that this team was prepared, that this team is ready for anything and everything, was, in my opinion, absolute bullshit. And it might have been either Raheem who said this, it could have been Zach. I think it was Raheem who said this, who said, well, we got a plan for TJ. What was the plan? Getting Kirk Cousins killed all game? Was that the plan? Letting Caleb McGarry get destroyed without any. We know Caleb McGarry versus TJ Watt. We know that ain't gonna work. And why wasn't that a Charlie Warner? Why did you have Kyle Pitts chip blocking in many instances? That's Arthur Smith bullshit. That is why you can honestly look at yesterday and say that might have been a leftover Arthur Smith playbook. I don't know if Zach Robinson forgot his playbook or lost it and no one else, had a spare one. So the only one that was there, upstairs where he was calling it was the, regardless, it was sad. it was sad to see because we were told that this was going to be different. We were told that this is a new era. We were told that we are back to having at least a average offense, at least having, an offense that you could digest, an offense that maybe could even be great. And they shit the bed yesterday. The O-line did awful. Receivers, they didn't get the ball. The only one who got the ball was Bijan and Kirk Cousins. And I think this leads to the other big issue. And it's the very big question I think everyone is thinking now. Is Kirk Cousins fully healthy? Because listen, I don't know if y'all saw, but he wasn't wanting to test that Achilles. Now, that could be one or two things. That could either be it is fully healed, but he doesn't feel like testing it yet. It's so early in the year. And if that's the case, maybe that is where you should have let him play in preseason, which Kirk said, I want to play in preseason. I want to go. And Raheem shut that down. So ultimately, you got to look at it from that standpoint. That could definitely be a possibility where Kirk really wasn't confident. He really wasn't feeling it. And that is where he took, he just really in many ways did not have a good game because that fear of stepping the wrong way got in the midst of actually doing what you were brought here to do and being that $180 million quarterback. That first interception he threw was absolutely awful because he had Bijan right there, and Bijan would have probably gotten at least a good 5 to 10 yards. He just wasn't looking at him. Why wasn't, and this goes back to Zach Robinson, why was outside of that one play to Kyle Pitts, why wasn't there any more efforts to scheme a guy like Drake London open? Why didn't you let Kirk throw up a go ball? Why wasn't there anything, why didn't you get Kyle Pitts going over the middle? Why didn't I see Kyle Pitts at all going over the middle? Because that touchdown that he had, they motioned him across the field, and then he ran in almost kind of like he was running, not necessarily corner out, but it was not over the middle. And then on top of that, Darnell Mooney, who I think some people maybe feel like we overpaid him. But still, why was there an effort to get him? Even though most of the shit he did come on that one drive right before half, still, he proved he can make catches. Why weren't there efforts in the second half to get him opened up in space? Why was it just, we're going to dump it off to Bijan here and hope he gets 5, 6, 7 yards? That's not a strategy you can win with. You got to play, and the team looked uncomfortable yesterday. The offense looked out of sync, and they looked uncomfortable. And honestly, you could easily, if you would show a Falcons fan how 2023 went for the most part, and you showed them this game yesterday, I'm like, they probably think this happened in 2023. They probably think, you gave them that stat line. Oh, that was a Desmond Ridder stat line. That was a Taylor Heineke stat line. That was Kirk Cousins. And that's what's so embarrassing about it. That's what is so gut-wrenching. I don't even really want to say gut-wrenching because I'm going to be honest. I felt gut-wrenching after Falcons games. I have. I've seen the Falcons shit the bed. This wasn't even, they shit the bed here. But I don't necessarily feel gut-wrenched. I just feel bamboozled. I feel confused with what this team is doing. What is this was the game you were preparing for months on this team. And this was your plan? And that's the sad part about it. It is. And to be honest, I don't know if they are being fully transparent about Kirk Cousins. That's the other thing. It could be he doesn't want to get into it, or it could be he's not actually fully, he's not fully 100%. Maybe that Achilles is only 70, 75%. Even though the tear did happen, I think 10 and a half months ago, still, guess what? Healing from an injury like that at 35 versus doing it at 25 are two different things. And with it being the first major injury of his career, on completely move environments, having to move teams, having to get used to a whole new medical staff, whole new, even far away from what he did do in Washington and Minnesota, still get used to a new building and all that stuff. Could he not be 100%? Now I'm going to tell y'all, we're not going to find out if Kirk Cousins is 100% or not, really probably until after the fact. And I'm going to tell y'all why. It's called investment. They made a $180 million investment in this man. And that $180 million investment brought some sold-out season tickets in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's brought publicity Sunday Night Football in a few weeks for the first time in 5 years. Arthur Blank really appreciates that because he's going to have his stadium. He's going to have his building on full display for the entire world live on NBC. So you're not about to just say, oh, actually, it hasn't really been healing the way we thought it would. They're not going to say that. That's not how it works. They're going to protect their investment because they got insurance on this bitch to insurance some way. And they're going to say, oh, well, he's just getting it better. It's going to be that bullshit. And see, if you are facing the Carolina Panthers within the next 2 weeks, maybe the panic wouldn't be as high. But guess who you're facing next week? Guess who you're facing next Monday night? You're facing the Eagles, a place that Kirk has struggled in, a place and a time slot that he is notorious for typically not doing good for, especially on the road. And a Falcons team that this is going to be many of those guys' first time playing anything other. This is Bijan Robinson's first time playing primetime. This is going to be outside of maybe 1 or 2 Thursday night football games. This is going to be the first. And even though, I am a fan of Thursday night football, I'm going to say it. I'm a fan of Thursday night football. It doesn't have the same feel as Monday night or especially Sunday night. That's what our next 2 games are. And when you look at it, most of this team, they're making their AJ Terrell. He's making his Monday night football. Well, I think he might have played on Monday Night Football one time before. But he's making a Sunday Night Football debut in a few weeks. Guess who he's going to have to go up against? Rashee Rice. He couldn't even cover George Pickens. He's got to cover Rashee Rice. And Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback. Next week, he's got to cover A.J. Brown. That's not ideal. It's not. He's got to clean shit up. He's got to get it cleaned up fast. Most of this team, most of these young guys, Kyle Pitts, Drake, Bijan, Algier, Matthew Bergeron, most of them, this is going to be their first time they've played in legitimate prime time, regular prime time the next few weeks, because we got Monday night, we got Sunday night, we got the 1:00 game versus the Aints in a few weeks, and then we're right back at it on Thursday night versus the Buccaneers. This is why we were talking about this game is key to win, because you got to start this thing off right. Because right after this, you're immediately thrusted under the lights into prime time. And everyone's going to see what your team is made of. That's why you had to get this win, to get the tempo in your favor, to get something going. Now, you're faced with an Eagles team that, even though they did not look the best in Brazil, still got the win, or still a damn good team. Then you got the Chiefs coming in, and then that speaks for itself. Then you welcome the Saints, which, look, the Panthers fucking suck, and everyone knows that. But still, putting 47 points up, that ain't nothing. That isn't nothing. They took care of business yesterday, unlike the Falcons. They took care of business. And then you got Tampa Bay, the team who's won the division the past 3 years, took care of business yesterday. And yet, we don't let up a touchdown. We still find a way to lose. Now, I've heard, the improvement from week 1 to week 2, and then the improvement from week 2 to week 3. Listen, I hope that's true. I do. I hope this was rust. I hope this was just the fact that this was their first time playing together in an actual game atmosphere, many of them. You're not in shirts and shorts in a practice. You're actually out there. You gotta, you got pads on. You're actually throwing that football around. It actually counts. It is actually a live game. You can absolutely hope that. Something is off. Why was the game plan the way it was yesterday? Why wasn't there no? Now, here's what I'm going to go ahead and address. Is the season over? No, I don't think you can say the season is over, at least not yet, because even though we do have a very tough next few weeks, it's only 1 week. Yes, we do have 17 games to go. And there are, in many ways, positives to look at. Defense, obviously, was one of them. You like seeing Bijan Robinson get involved. Now you want to see the rest of them get involved. Another big thing I haven't talked about. The Falcons, they did 0 play action yesterday. 0. That's almost never happened in today's NFL. And you're dealing, this is what goes back to, is Kirk Cousins fully healthy? Because NFL memory in Kirk Cousins, a guy who's thrived off of play action, a guy who's thrived off of under the center stuff. And yeah, he can do all right in shotgun. But he's a guy who in so many ways has benefited from being an under the center guy, being a play action guy. See, here's the thing with a team like the Eagles I'm going to talk about. You want to beat Philly, you're going to have to really get into that secondary. You're going to have to get Kyle Pitts and Drake London going that game. And guess what? You're going to need to take your shots. You know where you take your shots at most of the time? With play action. Play action, there was zero under center stuff. It was all either shotgun or pistol. And that does not sit right with me. It doesn't. That's why I think a lot of people feel there might be something we're not being fully told. And we deserve to find it out. We do. But is the season over? No, it is not. And yeah, it's a very tough next few games. But I will say, it is any given Sunday, it's any given Thursday, it's any given Monday, it's any given Friday, any given. They have games every day of the week now. Can we go into Philadelphia and beat the Eagles? Honestly, I don't feel too confident about it. No, I don't. Can we beat the Chiefs? I actually feel more confident we can beat the Chiefs than we can beat the Eagles. I will say, do I see us starting 0-3? I actually don't. I do think we're going to find a way to get one of these next two. I think your offense started so bad you are going to have nowhere to go but up. And you hope that, yeah, Zach Robinson did take this as a learning lesson, and he sees you actually do regardless. And regardless of whether Kirk is actually hurt. And if he's actually hurt, then that goes into, and you knew that you weren't going to be able to play action with him. You knew you weren't going to be able to run many, because the NFL today is an offensive league. Yes, it is important to have defense, but it is at its core today. Kirk Cousins, this doing play action, getting under the center, $180 million. That's the big question that needs to be answered. But that's kind of how it is sometimes. You're not going to get any answers, especially not out of the Falcons. You know, the Falcons are really one of the most beat around the bush organizations in the entire NFL. We used to beat around the bush a lot with Thomas Mitchell. I mean, whenever he speaks, he'll beat around the bush too. Terry Font Noah's was kind of a, beat around. He was kind of the ultimate beat around the bush guy, even though he honestly I will say this about Arthur Smith. As much shit as I have given him, I feel like, he was such that type of guy. It was honestly kind of a bit of honesty as you could get later on. Raheem Morris, he's the ultimate beat around the bush guy. Raheem Morris is going to beat around the bush. He's going to come into every one of those pressers with his big old smile. It's the opposite of Arthur Smith. Not saying he can't smile. Yeah, you can smile. I just prefer you smile when we win, because that's a reason to smile. You shouldn't have a big-ass Cheshire cheese cat grin on your face greeting Mike Tomlin after you lost. That should not be what you're doing. You need to figure out where the hell it went wrong and where it needs to be fixed. Now, do I think it's going to get fixed? I think if this team starts 0-3, I think our backs are really against the wall regardless of what our situation. We'll lose that New Orleans game or that Tampa Bay game. This is a wrap, probably. We cannot lose those two games, and honestly, we got to get one of these next two. This is the situation you buried yourself into now, losing the Steelers game. And the thing is, yeah, it's only week 1. But what's today's date? September 9th? October 9th. Let's see. That Buccaneers game was on the 3rd. We'll know what this team is made of by October 9th. We'll know what this team is made of in a month. We'll know where this team is going, if this team has a shot. If this team is 1-4 in a month, yeah, this was an absolute failure. They're 3-2. I'll eat my words. They bounced back. This was just a little rust in the pan. I hope we can win every game moving forward. I just don't see it happening. I don't. But I do think, and I'm going to talk about the Eagles game, obviously, later in the week. Do I think we're going to win? I don't know. I honestly feel like there's more urgency. You got to win this game now. I mean, same thing could go for the Chiefs game. As I say, I think we're going to find a way to get one of those two. I don't know how. I feel like we will. But if we don't, we're in a lot of trouble. We are. And look at our division. Favorites. It's supposed to be our division. Look what's happened. That's how it is sometimes, though. That's how it rolls. So, I'm getting ready to get out of here pretty soon. Obviously, I talked about this game. Just to put it in a nutshell. The defense did good enough for us to win. The offense shit the bed. That's what happened. And we're going to need massive improvement. We're going to. So, I appreciate you all for watching. Football is back. So, here is to that. We just need the Falcons. With that being said, obviously, game preview. I don't know when it's going to be for the Eagles game. Obviously, I have my picks out still. I'm probably going to look to get that, picks out tomorrow. And then probably, the Eagles game probably a little later and maybe even towards the weekend since it is a Monday night game. I do have a little bit more time to really honestly think about this. With that being said, I will see you all in the next one.